Okay, so thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome everybody to week number 89 of the Indigenous Global Unity Summit, our IGU Summit. I do start every one of these sessions this week with a land acknowledgement. So we begin today by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of Indigenous people. We recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We're grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources. We're committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on here in the Greater Toronto Area is the traditional territory of many nations on the land known as Kalenkeha, Takaranto, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe or Anishinaabe peoples, and is now home to many diverse peoples. We'd also like to acknowledge the land we're on here is at the meeting place of two treaties, the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and those of the First Nations of the Williams Treaty. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. We also acknowledge the Two-Row Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Six Nations of the Takaranto watershed and the settlers, an agreement that bound them to work together, but to develop their societies in parallel on these shared lands. In our role as settlers and displaced people on this land, we share the responsibility of challenging and disrupting colonial systems that enact violence upon the land and stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. We would like to thank the Indigenous peoples of these lands, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, for sharing this land with us. We also acknowledge and recognize all of the world's Indigenous peoples as stewards of Mother Earth. So with that as well, I do like to say Sawubona, which means I see you, I see myself in you, I see your hopes, your dreams, and your struggles. I see your ancestors as well, because interconnectedness does not end with two people who are greeting each other. It extends to include the ancestors, because all beings in Mother Nature are interconnected, and there is no sense of being separate. I see myself in all beings, and therefore, if I harm other beings or Mother Nature, it translates into harming myself. Again, today is February 16th, 2023, Thursday, week 89 of this IGU Summit series. This is the 7th of our IGU Summit events for 2023. Our guest speaker for today is Stephanie Schuller from UnityNet International and the Maui Aloha Project. Stephanie is co-founder of UnityNet Ontario and Canada, a member of UnityNet Greater Toronto Area and the Unity Learning Network, among many others. The presentation title for today, this will be more of a discussion, but it's Building Inclusive Intentional Communities Worldwide. So this will be followed by discussions about our UnityNet 2023 Living Re calendar, starting to plan this for the year with our first event, major event being in April on Earth Day, drumming at City Hall. This will be followed by a June event on World Environment Day and August events on Internationally Coordinated Bubble Fun Festival Week during Indigenous Unity Weeks, and in October during Youth Peace Weeks from Global Cooperation Day to World Food Day. And with that, I will show our calendar. So this has been slightly updated now as I talk about events coming up. I do show this the audience our UnityNet Living Re calendar, something that I have been creating since the beginning of 2023, since we did based on the events last year. So Living Re calendar reflects our Drawdown Markham and UnityNet GTA plans for 2023. It revolves around the 4 key community engagement events, again in April, June, August, and October. So the events include UNDRIP Day on Earth Day, Saturday, April 22nd, our Abraham Project Tree Planting Day, our International Youth Day on Saturday, August 12th, our Youth Peace Week in October. So Youth Peace Week starts on Global Cooperation Day, Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. This is the date of our Ubuntu Summit. the event that also launches not just Youth Peace Weeks, but also the Global Climate Smart Youth Forum, which is the primary hybrid learning week program that takes place until Monday, October 16th, which is World Food Day. You'll also notice that I've added Somos Avalon Maya, a spiritual event that takes place with the Maya in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, every Sunday at 11:11 a.m. Eastern Time. These events are shown in pink on the calendar. As Mitch Gold has said to me earlier this month, we are looking at how to connect the two energies of the eagle and the condor. So one last thing that I wanted to mention is that on Tuesday, January 17th, as you see in the calendar in orange, we had our first Drawdown Markham virtual event. At this event, we discussed establishing our PodNet GTA Enterprise Network, which will also support the 25 INAB collaboratives that we intend to create here in the Greater Toronto Area. As mentioned in weeks past, here in Markham and the Greater Toronto Area, we will be doing everything through the INAB collaboratives, including demonstrating regenerative gardens, forests, farms, and buildings, kitchens, and also regenerative finance. And of course, we'll be empowering our humanitarian entrepreneurs who are globalizing the global goals in each one of our own local communities. So please join us wherever you are in the world. So this is the essence of the Global Unity Network, our network of networks, which consists of the local and localized multi-stakeholder partnerships, the interfaith, neighborhood, academic, and business collaboratives who are changing the paradigm of development globally, one local community at a time. I also mentioned for the past few weeks that there are other things to consider because the FAO did come out with their newsletter in January. It noted that 2023 is the International Year of Millets. So this is also something to consider. COP15 was also mentioned, especially around the adoption of the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And it's also important with regard to the 2023 SDG Summit, the high-level political forum on sustainable development that takes place under the auspices of the General Assembly, which will be convened on 19th, 20th September 2023. And it's during the UN General Assembly High-Level Week, where heads of state and governments gather at the UN headquarters in New York to follow up and review the implementation of the 2020 or 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. This has also been added to the calendar. I'm hopeful that we'll have some presence at that event, possibly in collaboration with our partners in Manhattan, such as Energym University or We the World, Bill and Rick. So again, in the chat, you will find some links to the 2023 SDG Summit, as well as some information from the FAO newsletter, as well as some additional information about the IPCC, as it's called, the International Plant Protection Convention, and the link to the scientific review of the impact of climate change on plant pests, which the FAO is currently undertaking, and then more recently, the Secretariat of the International Plant Protection Convention, and they're meeting with officials in Ottawa and Washington, and the link as well to the Women's Empowerment Farmer Business School, which we are hoping to link as well with through our own networks, where we can move together in synergy with UN programs. And there is a program as well, a report on the status of digital agriculture in the 47 sub-Saharan African countries. But as we move forward with our legacy projects here in Markham, we have already begun having local conversations with the 7th Generation Initiative and their legacy projects, which are about empowering generations to connect dots, create a bigger 7th generation story of change for the well-being of lives, communities, and the planet. So we are talking with Brian Popa. We're hoping as well to talk with Susan B. Bosak, who is the founder of this initiative, We are in the process of having those discussions right now. And as noted before, we hope also soon to have a conversation with the founders and leaders of the Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security, which collaborates with other organizations and individuals to advance food security, in particular here in Canada. So February holidays and observances that are maybe of some importance, at least in the next week or so. Today being Thursday, February 16th, as noted. Today is not a special day in the UN calendar. However, coming up are 2 dates to consider, including the World Day of Social Justice, which is Monday, February 20th, and noting also that mental health is directly connected to social justice, and International Mother Language Day, which is Tuesday, February 21st, with the theme for 2023 being multilingual education, a necessity to transform education. So in the chat, you'll find again some links about the World Day of Social Justice, which recognizes the need to promote social justice, which includes efforts to tackle issues such as poverty, exclusion, gender inequality, unemployment, human rights, and social protections. There is also a link that I'm in the chat to a University of Alberta article about how social injustice affects our mental health negatively, and how it's important to acknowledge that some of us are more heavily impacted than others. There's also a link to the International Mother Languages Day at UNESCO for those who wish to learn more about that, with the theme again being multilingual education, a necessity to transform education. Also in the chat, you'll find a link to our Indigenous Languages Day WhatsApp discussion group as well. With a reminder that last Saturday, February 11th, was International Day of Women and Girls in Science, where the International Day is an annual observance adopted by the UN General Assembly to promote the full and equal access and participation of females in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. Again, today, Thursday, February 16th, there are a couple of days in this calendar that might be of some interest for the fun. Today is Do a Grouch a Favor Day. It's also National Almond Day. So these days are obviously not recognized in the UN calendar, of course, but they are fun events to consider celebrating in our own personal lives. So you'll find in the chat a little bit of information about Do a Grouch a Favor Day for those with grouches in their lives, as well as National Almond Day, which again, that information in the chat about that day. So we are still planning to have a discussion primarily with people like Sir Bailey at Youth Build Charter and Michael Redler from our C4 group as well. That's our Climate Smart Community Construction Collaborative, where we hope to also talk with people like Lynn Crandall, Marcella Olivia, and Isaac Sebakije about the next Earth Fest, which is also in planning. It is not one of our events, but we also do hope to somehow participate and have some input into that event. We want to co-host this hybrid event with our UnityNet GTA, PodNet partners, and all of the Wikipod collaborators. We hope this event will also help spark the imagination of young people and teachers and their parents and elders who are working with the local learners at our schools here in Markham, York Region, and the Greater Toronto area, where we can also empower them to take action through the Global Sister Schools program, starting with the planting of youth peace gardens. We also hope to work them in close collaboration with UnityNet Ontario and UnityNet Canada members, and the co-founder of the Indigenous Global Unity Network, Mr. Michael Schur. So where we would like to begin having these conversations about practical reconciliation, starting with the development of a curriculum related to Michael's Indigenous Unity flag, specifically establishing a legacy education project to do in solidarity with Indigenous peoples, possibly also with Scouts Canada and possibly even Scouts Europe, hopefully with more partners like Rotary International, as they seek to implement the Indigenous Unity Badge that can be used by the young people who are participating in their programs, where we can partner with local schools, especially schools of the arts and schools of architecture, in each of our local communities across our network and networks, where we can host a series of virtual and in-person charrettes, help Michael and the Scouts come up with this curriculum, hopefully over the next few months, where the curriculum would help young people understand that every country has their own Indigenous peoples, that we must become compassionate members of a global society of humans, and an essential part of a process of real reconciliation. The key people who have for these projects are the members of the Unity Learning Network, the Global Sister Schools program, and others who may wish to contribute to this process and these efforts. So I'm going to move on some new pages this week. UNDRIP Day 2023, Earth Day, drumming at City Halls is coming up. This is the event where we'll do a drumming at City Halls with Indigenous peoples. It's also the day we engage with the students at our local schools and have them and encourage them to start planning and building their own local youth peace gardens at their own local schools or in their communities and with the community partners. So again, in the chat, you'll find a little bit of information about the new link to the Eventbrite page for this event, and you can see that at the bottom of the screen. This is actually not active yet, but will be coming online. It's scheduled to go live tomorrow, Friday, February 17th in the evening. I still need to make a couple of changes, but for now, for those who want to make sure it's in their calendar, there is an event link, a Zoom ID where you can register even now, even if it's not on the Eventbrite page itself. Also, you'll find in the chat information about Earth Day itself being an annual event that's being taken place for many, many years. So every April 22nd, with this year being I don't know exactly how many years it's been, but it's been a long time. So again, we also have our Abraham Project Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremonies on World Environment Day. The event takes place Monday, June 5th. This is the day where we plant the trees of peace and reconciliation, and in some places raise the Indigenous Unity flags, probably not in Canada at this point. But we do this in celebration and ceremony at the youth peace gardens that the young people in our local communities established with their schools and with the rest of the community members. So it's on this day where we create the INAB collaboratives, our local empowerment networks for the humanitarian entrepreneurs in our local communities, with the INAB collaborative cooperatives being entities that form the backbone of our network of networks. So again, you'll find a little bit of information in the chat about World Environment Day. The next day is the Internationally Coordinated Bubble Fun Festivals. This takes place on International Youth Day. So this is the date for our Bubble Fun Festivals. So I want everybody to keep this open. This is where we come back to those youth peace gardens and celebrate our diversity as localized communities of equals in our own communities, where we try to coordinate these events globally and celebrate together in a hybrid event that is local and global through the virtual sharing, where each one of us human beings in our local communities recognizes those around the world who are localizing the global goals through the development of partnerships in our local communities, and where each of us helps to ensure that our own local humanitarian entrepreneurs are empowered by the members of our INAB collaboratives. So this takes place during Indigenous Unity Weeks, which starts on International Day of Indigenous Peoples, which is August 9th. And that continues through International Youth Day on August 12th and ends on World Humanitarian Day, which is on the 19th. So again, in the chat, you'll find some additional information about those dates, especially in the UN calendar. And then following that, we have Youth Peace Weeks, a summary here of the Global Cooperation Day to World Food Day weeks. During the Youth Peace Weeks, we'll do some edutainment programs with both in-person events here in the city of Markham, in the region of York, and from across Ontario and Canada, but especially from the Rouge and Don watersheds of the Great Lakes Basin here on Turtle Island, in partnership with the members of our own local communities, including the schools and the Indigenous people here in the Greater Toronto area. We'll also work with schools like York University, Seneca College, local school boards, teachers from the Catholic and secular schools, seeking to work with our UnityNet members through Drawdown Markham and our partnerships, especially as we create our local INAP collaboratives here in the GTA, where we'll seek to create at least 5, but as many as 25 of the local empowerment networks established in 2023 over the next few years, with at least 3 by the end of 2023 that we're hoping to establish in Markham, Vaughan, and Richmond Hill. INAP cooperative empowerment networks for our local young people and humanitarian entrepreneurs are those who are localizing the global goals here in Markham, Greater Toronto, Ontario, on the Great Lakes Basin, north of Lake Ontario, Turtle Island. So join us through these Drawdown Markham, UnityNet, GTA, Ontario, and Canada events. If you're living in another part of the country, or in another country, or on another continent like Africa, join our UnityNet CTP program. We can coordinate our activities and partner with your local community through each of our own local INAP collaborative teams. So Global Cooperation Day, again, October 4th. I don't have any information about that, unfortunately, in the chat, but we will share that information with anybody who does connect with me afterwards. And then we also have this year a Sunlight Spectacle hybrid edutainment event on October 14th. This takes place during the annular eclipse that will be visible from the US, from Oregon, passing down through to Texas, and then throughout Mexico and Central America, and then down to South America, ending in Brazil. So this is the final event I'm hopeful that we can do this year as well. This Sunlight Spectacle 2023, following the solar eclipse, taking place on October 14th, starting at 5 a.m. around Dune City, Oregon, in the US, visible from the northeast corner of California to Rio Grande do Norte in Brazil, where it finishes. During the Sunlight Spectacle events, we do edutainment events that send messages of unity, peace, hope, self-reliance, sovereignty, sustainability, forgiveness, and regeneration of our planet and society. So the message we send out during these events are not only about jobs and the economy, because the education and training that we deliver through the Unity learning infrastructure is intended to uplift people with dignity, where the process and results of the learning is all about practical reconciliation. So again, you'll find some details in the chat about Sunlight Spectacle 2023, in particular that eclipse, which crosses from the US over the Gulf of Mexico to the Yucatan Peninsula, Punta Cuyachaya, Campeche, Mexico, ends in Chetumal, Quintana Roo, Mexico, crosses over northern Belize, Belize City, and then over down into South America and Brazil, finally to the Rio Grande do Norte, Brazil, where it completes over the Atlantic Ocean. But before we start today, I would like to give everyone a little bit of our history for those who have not been on this call. As I wrote in many of our UnityNet group discussions, as I was saying, Happy New Year 2023. I wanted to say thank you to all who stayed with us with UnityNet for this past year, especially as we exhibited so many growing pains. We do continue our journey together, seek always to find not just ourselves, but our better selves. Or as one lady said during recent HHG Clubhouse discussion, in 2023, I'll be seeking to be the best me. So I'd like again to mention where UnityNet started, because it did all begin with the Mother Earth watering the fields of humanity, Just Stop Music Showcase, which you can find some information in the chat, where it began with the greater unity pandemic, which emerged on the fringes of the COVID-19 healthcare crisis, where we were trying to create a social media response that overshadowed the mass media focus on fear, panic, and death, where we were obliged to shelter in place. We wanted to create new survival skills based on Ubuntu love, remote learning, and virtual collaboration. So we're hoping that this greater unity pandemic message will continue through UnityNet and our UnityNet programs that we are delivering both here in Canada and in Africa, and as well in other communities around the world. So I noted in the chat groups recently that we want 2023 to be the year where humanity is able to truly begin the process of breaking out of the shackles of colonialism, which is as much about a mindset as it is anything else. Although, of course, there's still the by-force element to it, still on display in places like Ukraine. I also mentioned recently the original Spark for Humanity initiative, which actually started this discussion in 2019, before the COVID-19 pandemic, as a practical legacy that helps everyone focus on the kinder world that we can create together and begin the so-called Mother Earth transformation, which you can find the video in the chat. This video by Schlepp Entertainment, where I also noted we can begin to establish a global network of UnityNet peace communities, peace villages, peace cities, by starting to plant those youth peace gardens in all of our local communities. Again, in the chat, you'll find a link to the UnityNet Youth Peace Gardens Network and the UnityNet Smart Cities Network. I also included in a WhatsApp post earlier this year a few other videos for people to watch, including the ones that I'm going to be sharing in the chat, like the one by Omar Essa called One Love, which was our theme song for the original Global Unity pandemic, which began again during the COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020. I would like to remind all of our members in UnityNet and UNAD, UnityNet African Diaspora, in Africa, and some of our key networks and chats. This has always been about engagement of youth culture and hip hop, because back in October 2019, on the 27th day, our host for that day, Andrew, which began this discussion and does so every week, outlined for us the specifics of the 5 key strategy areas, where first, we'll open new routes to engage and involve young people and amplify their voices. Second, we strengthen our focus on their access to education and health services. Third, we'll place their economic empowerment at the forefront of our development strategies through a focus on training and jobs. With fourth, working harder to ensure young people's rights are upheld and promoting their civic and political engagement. With the fifth strategy being to help prioritize support for young people in conflict and humanitarian crises, including their participation in these peace processes, with the priority areas outlined by Andrew during a discussion with the original team, that Greater Unity pandemic team that created the Spark for Humanity initiative, which was supported by all the artists who were singing in that Mother Earth video by the Mother Earth Collective. So I encourage everyone to watch the videos that I placed in the chat, because they are great examples of what we call edutainment. And if we have time after the main presentation, we may even play some of them for our audience today. between our discussions. So again, in the chat, you'll find additional information about rights, human rights, including Convention on the Rights of the Child, as well as the Committee on the Rights of the Child, and the African initiatives that are moving forward. But getting on today's presentation, I'd like to start with a simple introduction of who I am, who we are, just before we get on to our guest speaker. So I am Lloyd Halferty, co-founder of UnityNet International, known as Uni, a hybrid holistic practicum learning system management company based in Canada that also assists with community partnership building globally by leveraging a unique set of community engagement activities developed in partnership with the members of the AHIABGA. So I'm also the Chief Ecosystem Director, Program Development Director, and Sustainable Society Consultant for Energime, headquartered in Manhattan. I'm located in the city of Markham in the Don River watershed. German Mills Creek is a sub-watershed which drains into Lake Ontario, the lowest and last of the North American Great Lakes, in the Great Lakes Basin of the Greater Toronto bioregion in southern Ontario, Canada, North America, also known as Turtle Island. So Energime University is a private 501(c)(3) nonprofit in New York, a member of the UN Global Compact, a UN academic impact member. We are a virtual university. We were created to help empower global populations to reestablish a sustainable balance with their local environments. We do this by designing and implementing projects that support strong and diversified local economies while integrating these core sustainable technologies and infrastructure into these local communities in the areas of renewable energy, high density food growth solutions, and systems for sustainably managing local waste streams and protecting local water resources. We are supported by over 375 companies whose products and technologies we employ. We do, as an entity, also support local education and training in the construction, deployment, and maintenance of all of the various integrated solutions for achieving these closed loop systems that support self-sufficient, sustainable communities. I'd like to go into more details about what it is that Energime University expects to happen as we begin to assist projects in local communities anywhere in the world. I do remind our audience that Energime is a charitable organization, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We do not and legally cannot profit from our projects, aside from covering our costs of operating, hiring people. We need to create the projects with our project partners. So we're not looking to compensate anyone for land or any opportunities to help them create a community project that in the end they will own. So we will not be paying for that since in the end we do not own their projects, their infrastructure. But we can provide the facility construction support, the education, the training expertise, and the project development support so that your community members and your local entrepreneurs can create the solutions required, whether it's here in Canada or in Africa or anywhere else in the world. So we do not intend to pay for that opportunity. We also help our partners find money for your own local project if you are willing to put up the land, find some of the financing on your own end as well. So as of this moment, we do not know of any other organizations or efforts other than some international agencies, World Bank, for instance, but they don't necessarily come in and gift the effort of project development for a community or for a school or for a country. So the UN financing, of course, goes through governments, is top down, tends to be somewhat corrupted in some ways. Some people say even extremely corrupted. But there needs to be buy-in from and material participation on the part of the partners for any charitable organization like Energime and any of the philanthropic entities that we are affiliated with to contribute to completing and funding and implementing these local projects. This is particularly true if the project is designed for a school or other private organization and is not a direct funding to a government of your country. So our work includes partnership with the UN DP. We are getting their participation of the countries directly. We are also able to look for matching funding in the US with Energem University being incorporated there, especially from the groups who are interested in supporting our projects. But if those entities don't see that material buy-in from the partnering entity in places like Africa or Indigenous communities, they will have also no interest in funding these efforts. The mindset being that if they see that the partner isn't willing to contribute to the local solution, then they must not be committed to the project. So everyone we work with puts up the land. After that, they own the local projects that they build and we complete. So we'll not pay our partners for something our partners will ultimately own themselves. So we're here to help provide all the project direction, implementation expertise for these projects. We're committed to seeing them done all over the world. But we do need partnerships. We do need partners on the ground who are at least equally committed to the success of these projects in their own local communities. So the benefit of the Energem University programs is that any community that builds them will have a local training center that will regularly graduate the next generation of high-tech farmers. We can also extend our efforts into retraining farmers throughout the community and throughout the country as well into future years. But the key to this is that community involvement, including a combination of local organizations, schools, government agencies, which is one of the main reasons why UnityNet is building our empowerment networks in this way, as we say, globally. So again, in the chat, you'll find my own contact information, as well as some information about a new article that was published titled "Canada is Advancing the 2030 Agenda at Home and Abroad and Accelerating Progress on the SDGs Throughout the United Nations Decade of Action." So this was just published for me by Andrew Williams, Jr. It is a press release by the Government of Canada indicating that they are moving ahead with implementing the SDGs. So again, we're hoping to partner with them, or at least with our local community. That is where we start. If we can get support from the federal government to do what we need to do, all the better, but that is not where we start. So again, you'll find in the chat some additional information about our methodology for education and training from the Energem University website. And you'll also find links to our OSWAG, the Science for Peace CSF program, consulting group, and the organizations that are promoting Science for Peace protocols for climate smart food certification. There's this concept, of course, of climate smart food developed by the Climate or the Science for Peace Community Sustainability Working Groups in about 2015, based at a team at the University of Toronto. We created the Community Sustainability Working Group as something to move forward with as a way to complement the programs of the FAO and their climate smart agriculture programs, which in many ways have been adopted quite wholeheartedly, especially by communities in Africa. So I think I will, at this point, stop my share and will let Stephanie Schuller continue and give her own talk today on the subject that she's the top expert in. Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Lloyd, and I'm grateful for all of the explanations that you give and are committed to weekly on the Indigenous Global Summit. It's crucial, all that we're coming together with, all the people that we're coming together with globally, locally and globally, and the pursuits that we are committed to, which has to do with climate action, food security, and uplifting all people all around the world. So appreciate you, Lloyd, and your commitment to this paradigm shift and to supporting this network. So my name is Stephanie Schuler, and I live in Toronto, Canada. My topic for discussion today is inclusive, intentional community. And I want to share with you why I am passionate about this topic and why I have been supporting these weekly Indigenous Global Summit events since they began more than a year ago. Now we're nearly at 90 weeks. Currently, I am in my final year of my doctoral studies at the University of Toronto, OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, in the Department of Curriculum, Teaching and Learning. My doctoral research explores the social emotional experience of being labeled with learning disabilities, which I believe for most people and children who experience being labeled, any label, the stigma and self-fulfilling prophecy alone often leads to a negative social emotional trajectory. Since the Industrial Revolution, especially, most of our systems are deficit models, focusing on disability rather than focusing on ability or asset models. And we know that most ancient cultures and Indigenous groups globally originally operated via ability model approaches. It is age-old wisdom to care for the holistic well-being of the community members, its children and the elders, the physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and so on well-being. With our Western sophistication, though, we seem to have forgotten some of these core principles for not only survival, but to foster thriving communities. We live in a time that encourages competition, not cooperation. And where is that getting us? Where is this getting our children? Where we currently have a youth global mental health crisis. The current system must shift. We need a paradigm shift. Upwards of 50% of youth globally have global mental health issues, starting with anxiety, depression, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, to name only a few. And then there are so many other factors that can contribute to poor mental health and poor physical health, family situations, social economic situations, civil instabilities, and so on. So with all of this, I went on to found the Maui Aloha Project, MAP, a global eco-village initiative co-creating living, learning, and healing communities. This initiative isn't pursuing anything new. In fact, we are trying to replicate the old model, heeding the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I have the good fortune to visit and learn from some of the leading intentional communities and learning and school alternatives in the world. As the Canadian representative for ARROW, the 50+ year global alternative education resource organization, which connects and supports alternative learning and schooling environments to the conventional public and private options, places and spaces like outdoor schools, arts and sports-based schools, etc. And with a degree in play, I seek environments such as youth groups, lunchtime, after-school programs, extracurricular endeavors, and spaces where, and these are spaces where many more children thrive than in the traditional school environment, the traditional conventional school environment. And in these alternative spaces, or these in-between spaces, which society doesn't seem to value as much as the spaces that impose an externally created curriculum, vital skill sets are learned, vital skill sets are experienced that are valuable and will continue to be valuable even into the adult years. So the Maui Aloha Project is an intentional community project that helps create this new paradigm by merging the principles from these other spaces that value thriving and social and emotional well-being first. With 3 of our Vision Council members in Maui, Hawaii, USA, and the other 2, including myself, in Ontario, Canada, we hope that the Maui Aloha Project will gain land and spaces through various places on Turtle Island, the States and Canada, and beyond, where our core is climate action. But climate action is not only for the survival of humanity through responsible use of our planet's resources and the caring ability-based systems whose core is to foster thriving individuals and communities, climate action for the planet, and also climate action for our internal and communal climate action within for the people and for the planet's inhabitants. The Maui Aloha Project has a group of nearly 100 people now called Maui Aloha Project and Nature Paradise Eco Village, who are coming together to consciously co-create a living, learning, and well-being community near Ottawa, Canada. This group is committed to be of service in supporting other communities locally and nationally as well. And as a founder and director of the UnityNet International, which is hosting this call, I further my commitment to climate action by helping to foster learning systems for a thriving planet and thriving for all inhabitants. Living in this digital age can be a game changer as far as being able to share climate action learning in all corners of the world. UnityNet International continues to garner relationships with those who have leading processes to support food security and climate smart initiatives. Ancient Indigenous wisdoms with regard to feeding our communities nutritionally and remembering the medicines from food spaces such as gardens, farms, forests, and the waters of the world is crucial. Our Unity network to date has an amazing growing network of people in every sector, in all regions of the world, working cooperatively together in the pursuit of shifting to paradigms that celebrate multiliteracies and all identities. We welcome continuously you and your friends and your community to assist us with this shift towards cooperative communities and societies that embody climate action for the planet and its inhabitants. And I'm including on this in the chat for this call, a conscious collaborators form that you're welcome to fill out that will ask you to communicate to us how you connect to these communities, these eco-villages, these intentional communities, and these system paradigm shifts to that honor multiliteracies and honor all identities. Where are your skill sets? Where can you contribute to helping, shift from this deficit model so that more children and more communities can thrive with regard to not only living in community, which may or may not be what one wants, which essentially is the old model of living in a village, which we must remember because we have forgotten. But the systems towards learning in different ways, learning that engages children, learning that engages just children from where they are, from where their interests lay at the moment, where individuals can help bring children along the way from where they are and bring out the necessary skills from their areas of interests, rather than just pointing out where they're deficit. We live in a changing time where the school system has valued en masse reading, writing, and literacy. And literacy has been reading and writing, but we live in a time of this digital age where we're able to speak into a device and have that dictated, have that written down, and even spell checked and even grammar checked. We live in a time where there's something to read that can be read auditorily to people. So there are different ways of gaining literacy. And of course, the school system, the point of schooling, the point of learning, I think most of us would believe, is to rear children to become independent adults, who can pay their own bills and can make their way and have responsible, valuable resources and processes so that they can be leaders in their community. And now with this digital age, we have YouTube as one vehicle which can teach orally and visually. So the old labels where a child can't read necessarily by age 6 or 7 isn't fair. It isn't making a purpose anymore. Some children naturally might not learn to read or write at younger ages, but might come into it in older ages, like 7 or 8 or 9. And so perhaps it's okay to learn in different ways, experientially, visually, orally. I met a person in my travels in Maui, Hawaii, whose children had been homeschooled. And there was a 10-year-old child who did not yet read and would normally have been labeled in school and perhaps even been suggested to be medicated so that they could focus. But this child had learned from YouTube, and YouTube may, and it's a matter of opinion, may and may not be a good learning source. But I speak to it because this child had built a monsoon storm resistant 2-story house. And I know that most children and even people who come out of university are not yet skilled in building a house, especially a storm resistant house. So the places and spaces where we can learn vital, valuable, lifelong skills is shifting. And maybe the schoolhouse and learning environments need to shift as well. And in this time where I especially bring focus to the poor state of mental health of so many children and so many adults and communities globally. Perhaps the school and learning centers need to have a different focus, a focus that fosters the social and mental, emotional well-being of the child and of the community member first and foremost. And from those places of well-being, of mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being, then we can go forth the matter of business, that being the curriculum that was decided, what is essential regarding literacy, communication, numeracy, science, and of course the arts. And of course the arts is so essential because in so much of the day, and I'm talking about learning communities and wanting to insert these alternative new paradigm learning communities, both in cities and both in these intentional communities, whether it's the city or the country. But so much of our day, currently, it's spent sitting, students in school sitting and workers in offices sitting. So much of our behavior is sedentary. And I know not only from my background in play and leisure studies, but also in general, that we're not living a balanced lifestyle. And we need to be moving more. Motion is lotion. We need to be playing more. You know, we see that through dance and through music and through sports and through the arts. One doesn't need to even speak the same language. You throw a ball in a field, all will go and figure out, even without knowing the same language, what to do, a game to play. We can see, and the same with music. You don't need to even understand the words, but feeling the rhythm, playing an instrument, dancing to the same sounds, we know brings smiles across faces. And we know that these kind of play, what we call play spaces, music and dance and sports and the arts, are places to bridge peace. Places where the playing field is even and equal, and without having a competitive environment or even having a competitive environment. But in these cooperative environments, peace bridging can happen. It's crucial that the arts be, that arts-based opportunities be available to children en masse, and even to adults and elders en masse. These places are vital not only for movement and our physical health, but we know that when we are engaged in these spaces, it changes our physiological health, our chemical health. It releases hormones that help improve states of anxiety and depression. And it takes the competition out and brings in the cooperation and our self-development. So I'd like to thank Lloyd and the Indigenous, the summit, and UnityNet International for bringing me to speak today, so that I could speak about the importance of intentional communities in communities that honor multiliteracies. In order to survive, we cannot continue with the industrial model systems that we have that were created to foster the same kind of cookie cutter result from people in the workplace and in the school environment. We need creativity. We need those who know how to grow the food, those who know how to make the food, and those who want to wash the dishes. We know in this time after COVID-19 globally, we know we are definitely living in a time that a time of loneliness. Loneliness is a huge topic that also contributes to the global mental health situation. And in fact, a couple months ago, I was asked to keynote at a youth-led mental health event. And I had asked one of the officiants how they connect to the topic of the mental health crisis right now. And they had said that they were in their final years of university when COVID-19 hit en masse on Turtle Island in the United States. And they were so concerned about their grades that they were only in their basement working on their computer, trying to get to the next level of into the university level, so that they can become they could garner a good wage so that they can support themselves as an adult, as has been the path in the Western world especially. And because their school district hadn't for 2 years gathered in person This child had only been in artificial air in their house, had not seen the light of day, was on screens from morning till night, and had no social interaction in the years of the age of 16, 17, and 18. And we live in a time now where there are children in their teens, in their childhood, in their young adulthood, in their 20s, who many experts would say have gone backwards in their social development, in their social skills, and their ability to interact, to chit chat, to make eye contact. So we're in a crucial state to reconfigure our priorities, to refocus. And COVID-19 should have brought about the awareness and the preciousness of social interaction, being able to give your mother a hug, being able to meet with a friend or a neighbor for a coffee, being able to play with each other, being able to even learn with each other. These places and spaces are precious. And we continue to live in a world of food insecurity and instability. And we need no longer to take it for granted that we can get food from the grocery store that is shipped from across the world. We need to develop the systems in our local regions, that from seed to table, the food systems, so that the children learn en masse, learning from young ages the priority and the importance of planting seeds and growing food, growing enough food for their school, growing enough food for their communities, and being able to have those transferable skills, whether it's in learning environments for children like school, whether it's in community environments that invite intergenerational members of the community to participate and learn in these vital skills and processes, so that we don't take it for granted our food security, our food insecurity. And that's what Unity Network is about. Our Unity Network is about. That's what these intentional communities and the Maui Aloha Project is about. It is about our well-being, not just for survival, but for our thriving well-being, so that we can have enough nourishment via food, via each other. And you know, the digital age was promised to us around 2012 to be a time of more efficiency, that we needn't work a 40-hour work week because it would be that much more efficient. So that didn't happen. And our dependency on the digital device from morning to night, being the first light and the last light that we see, is also concerning. We must heed the indigenous wisdoms of balance, of the yin yang, you know, of the fast and the slow, you know, the hard and the soft. We must know when to utilize these devices and to utilize them in wise ways, like building a network, a global network that can help to harness these food systems, learning opportunities, and also the mental health priorities that we need to insert in schools and in our communities. So with that, I'm grateful to be connected to you all near and far, both on Turtle Island in Canada in the Northern Hemisphere, and I see so many of you on this call from the Southern Hemisphere, as far as Australia and Africa. And I know that together we are going to put it all together so that we'll be able to have these paradigm shifts that really focus on the thriving mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, ecological, and so on thriving of the individuals, the children, our communities worldwide. So thank you very much, Lloyd, and thank you everybody from UnityNet International, everybody who's on this call. And I know we're piecing together all the pieces for the next steps, and soon upon us, we'll have a thriving world and a planet that's thriving as well. And we'll be utilizing our resources in responsible ways and knowledgeable ways, and harnessing the indigenous wisdoms that we know have existed, and we must celebrate the elders and garner all of their insights and wisdoms that they know from their foremothers and fathers since the beginning of time, because the world was always regenerative and always survived in a responsible way without depleting the resources of the people and the planet. And so I'm grateful to be part of this growing infrastructure. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was very good to hear from you and put that into context. I'm really hoping that we can set up a meeting with Susan Bosak in the near future, because she has a very similar message around health, especially with her focus on connecting young people and the elderly, the grandmothers and the grandfathers in families across generations. That is actually the essence of her message around connecting 7 generations, connecting the youngest to the oldest, and making sure those conversations are happening, and that we're thinking not just of those in our own families, but in our entire communities, and into the future, far into the future, as the Indigenous 7 Generation Project is thinking along those lines. If you think 1 generation is 25 years, 7 generation is 175 years. So we're now thinking around to the year 2100, and what will life be like on this planet for those that are 7 generations out. That's a sort of sobering thought. Where are we headed, and how are we going to do that to ensure that there's a thriving planet? So, Mitch, you wanted to say a few words.
Yes, I didn't want to comment on this presentation exactly, but I put some files up there that might have some meaning to her presentation, or add meaning to it. But I wanted to mention three things. Firstly, when we start these meetings, it would be good if we burnt some copal or some sage or something to prepare ourselves to receive information. Our educational processes don't deal with the notion of smudging, but if we're going to honor the Indigenous people, we might consider using their process. In Mexico, we use copal, and in Canada, we use either pine or sage or sweetgrass. I use sweetgrass to smudge every morning when I'm in Canada. So smudging is one thing that I wanted to mention. The other thing is it's sort of an overview that in Canada, there is an initiative started called the Century Initiative. If everyone should go and look at what the Century Initiative is, it's something like what Lloyd is doing, except they have a lot of money to organize it. They have a fantastic scorecard. If you look at their scorecard, you can see it's spectacular, I should say, because it takes each of the areas of our society and it shows where we are in terms of looking at the end of the century, 100 years out. So they're looking at how is Canada going to be with 100 million people. They're planning for 100 million. Well, if they are, they need to use UNDRIP in their process. And so far, they have refused to take UNDRIP into their process. It's astounding. The person running it, and I recommend that everyone look at Century Initiative, and write a note to Lisa Lalonde and ask her how can she possibly move forward without incorporating UNDRIP into a future Canada? How can she do this? This is outrageous. I said I was going to have three things, but the second thing just blows me away. I guess I'll just have one other thing to say. Lloyd, you're doing a fantastic job. I want to just tell everyone how much I personally appreciate all that you're doing, and that you're interweaving very large global issues on no budgets, with no money. I don't know if I should say it. Well, I guess I could say it. I was approaching some lenders for some money to build the UN Office of the Future. And one of the lenders that was coming forth was someone from Poland. Now, I can't imagine Poland lending me $200 million when people in Poland need that money to build the communities that we're talking about. And they are saying to me, well, they saying I'm looking for a joint venture. No, I'm looking for I'm not building a joint venture. I could build a joint venture. It doesn't matter what you call the UN Office of the Future. But if what we're doing in each of our little local areas, with our Unity Gardens, which are going to help feed the people, and the model of the Aloha Project is excellent. I think it can be better by adding communications and educational processes too into the design. That's where the co-creation wheel comes in. By using the co-creation wheel, you can instantly see what is missing from the Aloha Project. You just need to look at it. You can see that the Aloha Project hasn't a holistic design. It has holistic concepts, but not up to the whole design. And I think, well, everybody does it their own way. So, cake is in, as they say. I don't want to take any more of your time here, Lloyd, but I want to thank you, and I have to run at the moment, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mitch. Always accept and acknowledge your input. I've written a few notes into the chat about what Mitch just talked about. What we would like to do, and we are moving forward here in Toronto, Greater Takaranto bioregion now, as we acknowledge the work of the 7th Generation Project as well, which we are hoping as well to work with these folks, Brian and the others that I mentioned earlier, Susan, and as well with our local universities, colleges, high schools, and any others that will wish to be involved. We want to, of course, partner every project that we do here with others in other communities around the world, which is why we've been engaging very diligently with especially those communities in Africa, looking at the what we call least developed countries, communities, and economies, LDCCEs. So the other thing I wanted to mention as well is that as we move forward, this initiative is really, it is not a government thing. It is a private thing. It's not being led by the schools. It is being led by the members of the multi-stakeholder partnerships, those INAP collaboratives that we are attempting to build. And that is the essence of our network. We want to do this in all local communities eventually, but we're not the ones to do it ourselves. We serve as an example where we bring all the stakeholders of the local community together, so they have their voice at the table around local community projects and decision decisions that are being made in those local communities. And we do want to empower especially the women and girls, along with the men who support them, as feminists, where the UnityNet is really all about creating those INAB collaboratives, and helping to bring all the members together globally, through our what we call our Interchange for Peace, which is that single universal safe space on the web that we would like to create, a UnityNet Interchange for Peace VCN meaning a virtual collaborative network. So this is where we're doing those tree planting ceremonies, the Trees of Peace and Reconciliation, potentially in some communities raising this Indigenous unity flag where it's recognized, and building especially those youth peace gardens where the Trees of Peace and Reconciliation get raised or get planted there, the flags get raised, the peace poles get assembled and are put into those gardens. We do want those gardens to be established all across the Greater Toronto Area. Hopefully this year we'll begin that process again in discussions with the schools like York, like Seneca, the school boards, working with Rotary, working with let's say the YMCA and other partners locally. We can start engaging those young people in this conversation, engaging them in those in the establishment of those gardens, the learning gardens as we call them, where we can really get them to learn about those regenerative, climate smart community solutions. So this is really the INAB collaboratives that we're building as the centerpiece of our network of networks, as we've called it since the beginning. Really where the network of networks becomes this empowerment network for our, what we call our humanitarian entrepreneurs, or the FFHE, the female and feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs, the ones that are globalizing the global goals because they're building humanitarian enterprises in our local communities. So the 8 different sectors that we have are public, private, civil society, academic, interfaith, finance, orange economy, and Indigenous communities, inclusive of as well of the African diaspora communities wherever we are. So that's where we want to create what we call UNET international offices locally in our communities as well, so that the African diaspora globally can help in each local community with the establishment of these INAB collaboratives and the programs they will develop and deliver to empower those entrepreneurs. So we are working with all members, watching and helping each other. This is as per what you see in our logo, this concept of Ubuntu. So we support our local female and feminist entrepreneurs to ensure that their businesses are successful, because we don't want this project that we're undertaking to fail. I think we only really have one shot at doing this, and it needs to be successful, because we are headed into a period of time, I think, where climate change is upon us. There's instability economically, environmentally, socially, mentally, emotionally, and we need to really come together as local communities to make sure that as we attempt to achieve this local food security in our communities, we won't be undermining ourselves and creating systems that will eventually collapse because of various reasons. So we need to ensure that whatever we build here, whether it's a vertical farm or some other kind of regenerative food production system, that those entities won't just go away after some time, because it may just be that they're going to be the essential backbone of our very survival into the future decades as we experience these disruptions in our supply chains and in our entire food systems with the extreme weather events that we're seeing and all of the chaos that's happening around the world. So this is why we're building networks that focus on fairness, focus on access, focus on equity, and focus on leaving no one behind as we try to bring everybody into these conversations. Very difficult task, but we're, I think, moving forward and trying to make this happen. So anybody on the call that would like to say a few words, especially those who may be new and would like to introduce themselves? For instance, Michael Coles is somebody I think who has come to us perhaps for the first time.
Yeah, g'day. How you doing, Lloyd? Thank you very much for everything you're doing here today, and our friend Stephanie as well. This is not my first time coming into your space. I've been aware of your work since the beginning some years ago. The aspect, Stephanie, thank you very much for all the work that you're doing in raising that consciousness in what is my hometown where I grew up. I currently live on Musqueam territory at is known as Vancouver, at the mouth of the mighty Fraser River here. And so I send all the blessings from the western door here of Turtle Island over to you guys. My heritage is actually of English and Ireland, Scottish, European, so forth. My great-grandfather made a beautiful child, and one of many from that day, and they came here in 1902 and to the was known as Toronto Purchase Territory. Being born of on those lands was a total blessing, and growing up and having the world come to those lands. The one dish, one spoon. And so I just want to thank you very much for reverberating that knowledge that you are doing, Stephanie. Thank you very much for that. That is much needed in these times and so forth. I don't really have anything really to say on the subject. I'm listening to the vibration of our sister here, Stephanie, and anybody else who's coming into this room. And I just want to thank you all for doing the good work on being good human beings. And that's the best we can do, is strive to be the best human being we can possibly be, with acceptance and understanding, with compassion, through kindness. And this is one reason why I keep abreast of the work that Andrew and yourself, Lloyd, have been doing and creating the structure for things to unfold. And it's nice to see that unity that is being called into this place from all over the world, that I have witnessed over the last couple of years of you doing this work. Thank you very much for all you're doing. That's pretty much all I have to say at this moment.
So thank you very much, Michael. It's good to
Yes.
It's good to hear your voice as well. I think I do recognize your name from being on our calls and in our networks. It's just we don't hear your voice very often. So it's good to hear actually from our members, and that's why we like to have these conversations at the end of these calls, where we can really start to get to know each other and understand where we are each coming from on this project.
Mm.
Am I hearing Juliet?
Yes, yes, you are. Good morning. Yes, it's so good to be here. It's so refreshing. It's good evening on my part, and I guess good morning on your part. This is Juliet Miyabo. I'm on the call from South Africa. I'm part of UnityNet African Diaspora. Yes, and an active member of Uni as well. No, I also want to, well, based in South Africa, I do a lot of work with communities. And it was also good to see Mr. Cole. And when you, Lloyd, when you said it's the first time, I almost corrected you, but I'm glad he corrected you because he's been on the call several times before, at least when I was there. But it's very refreshing to also have him on the call. Going back to the presentation, and thank you, Mr. Prince Andrew, for always making it happen. And Lloyd, yourself as well, thank you so much. Madam Stephanie, thank you for the presentation. As I wrote in the chat, that was very refreshing. You know, you always have the ability to remind us of the basics that we need to go back to. I mean, in the world today and with what's happening, including in my country, we're dealing with major issues. I mean, issues of Russia, Ukraine are also affecting us here. You know, where now we have to get involved and are expected to take sides. At a community level, there are also sorts of other problems, or at a government level. But in a nutshell, it's always good to be brought back to remember the importance of play, you know, because I work with children, and that always helps us to keep our sanity, the importance for children to play, to recognize indigenous methods that we've lost of keeping children active and away from the normal computers that we've normalized now. I mean, I'm struggling as it is with my own son. He's sitting here, he's rushing to, he wants to go play on his laptop instead of just doing his homework using a pen. But, you know, but play is also very important to keep a balance. And yesterday we had a meeting in Soweto with the councils there and various members of the community, and the issue of food security continues, and food insecurity. And we're talking about how a lot of the kids, I mean, they know big things about what's happening in the world, technology, 4IR. But if you had to ask them what is a seed, they wouldn't even be able to show you what a seed is. So children in urban communities need to be exposed to ways of dealing with the future in food insecurity, you know, because the problem we have now cannot perpetuate itself into the future. So, and the intergenerational approach that you spoke of, Mr. Lloyd, is so critical, and Stephanie spoke about as well, where the past generations or the older generations passing on that passion to the younger ones. We must not underplay that. And at times we want to almost change the world. And the beautiful thing, like what Mr. Cole said, you know, it's about bringing the world together and unity. But we also need to recognize that in small ways, in little ways, even through this meeting, or in our own small corners, in our own small communities, or even in our families or social gatherings, every little seed that we plant that encourages healthy, regenerative way of thinking and community is what will start spreading the fire, because it takes a small spark to light up a whole field with fire. So let's keep doing it and keep a balance as we face big issues, and keep coming back to the space and be refreshed. And thanks again, Madam Stephanie, and everyone involved. This is Juliet from South Africa.
Thank you so much, Juliet. That
Yeah,
That
thank you very
reminds
much.
me as well of again a saying of and I don't know the exact saying that as Susan Bozak was saying during these 7-generation meetings that took place last week. I attended 2 of them in person, one on Monday and one on Friday. Actually, it was January 30th and February 3rd. The meetings I attended, so that was 2 weeks ago already. But Susan was saying basically, if you want to create change, bring together a passionate and active grandmother and some young people that also have that passion, and you can change the world. And it's by bringing those generations together where we can actually create those changes that we need. So connecting the generations is important. That's why I'm so passionate about working with this organization, the 7-Generation Initiative. And they're the ones spearheading this network. So it's again in parallel to what we've already been starting to do through UnityNet. They're working with this gentleman, Joe Brewer, who's in South America, in Colombia. And Joe expressed a vision for his own network. But I think that we have in many ways come up with some of those structures that will allow them to implement their vision. So it's not even our own vision necessarily, it's their vision of a global network of connected ecoregions, where each ecoregion is composed of a number of watersheds. And I've talked about watersheds in the past and referenced understanding place, understanding your own where you are, the life of your own watershed, the life of your own ecoregion. So this is part and parcel of the global work that they are doing within that 7-Generation Initiative and the global network of regional
Lloyd,
watersheds.
You know, Lloyd, this is very paramount. I don't want to interrupt you here, but I just want to accent on that very aspect and touching base, because it goes weaves the web between what Juliet is saying, what Stephanie is saying, and the aspect of the food sovereignty and so forth. Now, everybody understands here also in the room, knowing what colonialism looks like, what corporatization, which is the mechanism that perpetuates that system of past, present, and hopefully not for the future. That's what we're here to change. But the aspect of land. So when you take the people's land from them, and if you want to read a good book about that, you can read Arthur Manuel, who is from the Shuswap Nation here. It's called Land Back. I encourage everybody to get to know that family, and so Tiny House Warriors are now fighting, which is a descendant of Arthur Manuel, George Manuel. But the aspect of the land is the foundational aspect that we have to come to realize that this is where one of the abuses start from. And so it is that theft of the land and the rape of the land that perpetuates all the rest of the systems that we stand on. And so the land being stolen here in Canada, and the Indian Act and so forth, of Indigenous people here. I currently live what a lot of people don't understand is unceded territory, the Coast Salish people, meaning that there's no treaty here been done. There's no agreements and so forth. It was basically theft by the way of sneaking a presence onto the land by a Black community when the Indigenous people didn't want them to be settled here. And they utilize that community in order to put their foundations at the European treaties and all those kings and queens of the old and so forth. So it is basically of the land that we need to come back from. Now here in Canada, that aspect of that needs a great amount of work. Our sister Juliet, as far as for this Africa, South Africa, country of South Africa, the aspect of apartheid and that aspect. So a lot of I know there's a lot of movement from on the repatriation aspects. And I just hope that the people are aware and just watch out for how the corporates are the ones who are owning the land. See, all of our land is being scooped up by non-person beings. These are personhoods that are recognized under the law of their own law, colonial laws or governmental laws and so forth. But it is that responsibility we humans gave up a long time ago, and that's why corporations exist. So the aspect of that corporations having the land when people are living on the street is intolerable anywhere on this planet. And it is prevalently a sickness that is unfolding all around. We all witness it. And so this is the focus of that aspect of getting the land back and able to grow good food and take back that land from the corporatizations aspect. A lot of people don't understand as well that the Indian Act and the process of here in Canada, that whole process was actually what was used with a couple tweaks to bring apartheid into South Africa. And so that relationship between South Africa and Canada is one that also needs to be brought into a consciousness, because it really ties into to be able to give a footing to help our Indigenous people here come out from this all I can call it just wickedness, but malevolence, wickedness. But so it is that focus, and I'm hearing that the consciousness in this room is on that same wavelength of which I'm speaking, and it's nice to hear. We need to propagate that understanding of, if you control your food and your land, then you can control the health of the future generations. And that's what we're all talking about here. Okay, we're all talking about what we can do for the future generations. And that is the focus that is growing at a conscious level around the world. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And we are in the times where, sorry, go ahead, Lloyd.
Yeah, no, if you have a few more words to say, but what I wanted to mention was that it might be worthwhile as well for us to have a conversation, Michael, with other members of one of our nodes of our network is called the Practical Reconciliation Team. We have people from Ottawa, we have people from Bermuda, we have others on that. It's a small chat group to talk about, especially as well with Michael Schur, the designer of the Indigenous Unity flag.
Yeah,
Michael,
I know who he is, yes.
Right, so Michael has said to me directly that he is not interested in ever flying the Indigenous Unity flag in Canada because he's been so dispossessed and disillusioned by any of even the Indigenous peoples here who are recognizing what his work he's doing. However, I have made the suggestion to him that perhaps the flag itself, when planted in Canada, can be a symbol of essentially taking back that land. You mentioned the land back initiatives. And so perhaps, and this is a conversation I think that we could have with both the Practical Reconciliation Team, as well as Michael and the members of the Indigenous Unity Flag Foundation regarding the symbolism of that flag. In particular, because one of the projects we would like to do in the Greater Toronto area is in Rouge National Urban Park, where we hope to establish some youth peace gardens, hope to establish some unity gardens, learning centers, but where we want to do projects of practical reconciliation. And what does that mean, to do a project of practical reconciliation? And it could mean that the national park, which was set up by the Canadian government and Parks Canada, managed by the Parks Canada right now, and they've basically taken over the lands there that were federal lands originally, but then some lands have been donated essentially by the City of Toronto and the City of Markham and others to become part of that national park. But now to co-manage that national park jointly with the Indigenous peoples, where Indigenous peoples now can begin to think about moving back into that park, managing that park as part of the ecosystem, as part of the watersheds, and showcasing how they can be living in a national park as part and parcel of that, and where the Indigenous unity flags can be a symbol of their return of at least 50% of the lands of those national parks back to Indigenous management and Indigenous sovereignty over those lands.
I agree with you,
and that's where we can create a model here in Toronto. And Parks Canada has said they want to create urban national parks in every major city in Canada.
Right.
And we can model this in all the national parks.
I want to just interject there, because this is you're promoting this in your words, and I would caution you be very careful on what that definition of national parks are, because it will still be in control of the crown, what you call as a crown, so forth. There are very fine lines in that aspect, but the one aspect that I just want to bring up to the aspect of what you're talking about, land back, because you're talking also about a place and space that is dear to my heart and which I grew up on. That whole area has been a constant battle to stop developers for 50 years since I mean, we were out there protecting that whole area system from when I was a teenager from being developed. And so that is very important that we do stop any kind of aspects. I know that converting it to a national park and everything else there's a movement on that. But again, I would caution those things of foundationally structuring stuff to stay in control of the Crown Corporation. The other aspect of that is for the food sovereignties and so forth with the land. Now, because of the structure that we live in, the deep rootedness of the Babylon control system into our land aspects, that it will take so long to unravel the legal aspects of transfer of lands that it is not serving the purpose to help the movement ground a footing. And so myself, I'm one of the aspect of what are the immediate things that we can actually change within our systems in order to deal with that. And that comes with money and the money system. Now, the money system is controlled by the banking systems of the world, which is now a one unit situation. But the aspect of repatriating land or that aspect can be done more immediately by going to the foundation of the two-row wampum belt and the purpose of the two-row wampum belt. And that is to work together side by side in that aspect. And that cannot be done and rooted in a proper, with a good seed into the soil, unless it is accompanied by money, by the monetary system. So I'm advocating a lot of times when I speak about these things in land back, because it is a very romantic subject on that aspect, because it is a knowledge that is unfolding to people that are of the unknowing. And and that's all good. But the aspect of the money, all we need to do is go to the government to tell them to mandate that an X amount of percent, whether it be 0.5%, 1/4%, whatever it is, and one into the banking system, so that any transaction of land, housing, any of those things that are related to that, land transfers, all that stuff, mortgages, all of that, that 1/4% and everything, or whatever's decided at the time, that be incorporated into the financial structure, and that monies go immediately being controlled by the Indigenous peoples under treaties, non-treaty relationships, and to be able to give that foundation of self and self-support. Because again, without the land, you have nothing. You can't feed your family, you can't feed nobody. And
so you're referring to a tax,
aspect,
right?
So that is a direct cause and effect that we can go to our governments. I know there are a couple aspects of this being discussed in the African continent as well, in different places, but this is what we need to bring here in Canada. And then from that, we can seed the soil with good food in those relationships, and going with that. So I just wanted to bring a bit of an outside the box perception to what you were speaking about. And again, like I said, the area that you're speaking to, I grew up canoeing the whole systems up through there, and I'm born of that land. The water that is in my body is of that land. My mother birthed me on that land, and I came through her from the water to that land. So that is my deep. I'm old enough. I'm in my 60s, and so having the respect for the land is something that I grew up with because of my elders who taught me that I had to carry my own water up the hill. We lived, we had an outhouse. I mean, it was my relationship with the land was a personal one in that aspect, and of the water. I was in the water for 9 months. I came out of the water for 9 months, and my mom threw me back into the water after 9 months. And I've been, my relationship with water and being a swimmer, diver, and all that, and my being in the work that Creator has me doing and so forth is always based around that consciousness of that. And so I've witnessed this Babylon system grow from the early 60s and 70s into this abuse of every day, because it doesn't matter what job we're all doing, we're all being abused by this corporate system. There's not anybody who is not affected by it. I mean, go get a job and then suddenly turn around and they say, okay, see you later. We don't need you anymore. And you're just pushed aside and left on the side of the street and fired or laid off or whatever you want to call it. So it is that control and that we
Sorry.
need to take back. So I just wanted to bring
Okay,
up
so-
that one aspect with the monetary
Yeah.
situation that is directly tied to the land when we talk about working with the land, growing our food on the land, being with the land, all these things, educating our children through the land. All those things are important in that way. And there are a lot of beautiful people who are doing that work that are unseen and unheard. And so I advise you to reach into your communities to find these people who are actually doing the work, walking the talk in their daily life, whether it's helping with a neighbor, leading by community examples, and bring them to the forefront to be able to have them share that heart, because it's not about the mind, it's not about the education system and knowing, it's about the heart. And so as we build that frequency back, which has been robbed of us over these years, you know, the uncaringness, which is in a whole nother different subject, but putting those seeds, we can't change anybody. We can't, there's no such thing as that. All you can do is plant a good seed and give it some love and let someone else and go on your way and have someone else water it, or you stick around and water it for a while, or but what you do will never be finished by you. So
Well,
it's very
this I think,
important that what you're doing with this unity, with the networks and what Andrew has started and everything else is great in that aspect to provide that way of channeling and openness for people to participate in. And,
well, and this is the
again,
essence.
Stephanie, thank you very much for your work in that area of consciousness as well, especially tied to Maui and sister islands there. It's one of my favorite. I'm a mountain man. I like to be on mountains. I'm very comfortable in two places. I know you're hearing me speak, but I actually am a very shy person. My most comfortable places that I exist is in the water and on top of the mountain. And that's where I find what you might call it, where everybody is searching for peace and tranquility and so forth. But that's my space for my being to share with you. So thank you very much again for this subject today. And Juliet, thank you very much. Do good work in everything. I'd like to hear more about yourself, of what you're doing there in your communities. And I love the consciousness from where you come from. Thank you.
If I may, just one sentence to say thank you. As we are speaking, Michael, it sounds like you could have been part of the meeting I was in yesterday, especially when, you know, when dealing with the issues of land, with the issues of where we're talking about the economy and building the economy, and how we always talk about in the absence of land, that means very little, because money is critical, but what do you do with it if you don't have land or anything else to develop? But I'm not going to repeat, because everything that you said is so much in line with the conversations that we are holding here at a community and at a national level. And I really appreciate your input. And even the point on developing the consciousness between Canada and South Africa, I've always been keen on that. Mr. Lloyd can confirm that I've always looked at how South Africa can always find opportunities to partner with countries like Canada. And I have stated before that I think because of this same level of consciousness that we could partner as looking at finding solutions and setting a tone, because other countries, the dynamics are very different. So I think this level of consciousness or shared consciousness should be explored going forward. And given an opportunity, unfortunately, I've been busy, but I'm hoping maybe in the few weeks to come, I'll be able to present what we've been busy with here in South Africa and in Soweto. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliet, so much for that. Let's catch up afterwards and schedule you in to do a presentation in the future weeks. Actually, I believe even next week, if you're available. I don't know if that's the case, but I think next week is actually I forget exactly why it's important, but it's an important week for a certain event, and I can get you that information if you're interested in next week, but if not, even some future weeks in our calendar as we do these events. And again, coming back to Michael's comment around identifying those people in your community who are doing the work on the ground and aren't being recognized, that is essentially what we are doing and why we have this weekly discussion, because we want to start discovering these people that are doing work. Like Juliet, I think we would never have met her without these networks being created and these conversations happening. And then we discover the gems and the jewels of every community locally, and the people that are on the ground taking action and doing the things that are necessary to really connect and do that difficult work. And I can say probably it's the same for everybody that's on this call. One more thing I did want to mention as well is with regard to the learning, especially around seeds. And Michael, I think, mentioned this as well. And seeds and planting and growing and learning how to connect with nature. This is part of the learning network we have through the what are called the 4K clubs, and those are intended to be implemented outside of the schools, but also potentially in conjunction with the schools and the curriculum, where youth and children have this opportunities to connect with food growing systems and connect with nature and their watersheds, and even the mountains if they're in a place that has mountains. I love mountains myself, actually. Actually, my connection to mountains is through my wife, who's from Taiwan, a very mountainous country as well. And I grew to love all things mountain by living in Taiwan for some time in the 1990s and visiting that island so many times. And I grew to love South Korea as well, which is a country of mountains. As a result of working that part of the world, I did grow to love mountains as a result. So I'd like to as well acknowledge Preeti Aluwalia, who has made a comment earlier as well on our chat. If she could introduce herself, that would be much appreciated. Preeti wrote, will the recording be on the PBS Wisconsin Education YouTube channel? So with regard to that question, if Preeti would like to open her mic and introduce herself, she could do that as well. But Andrew may be able to answer that particular question with regard to his relationships to any of these other networks and let's say YouTube or other channels.
Well, yes, good morning. This is Andrew Williams Jr. And the short answer is that this is publicly available. We do a broadcast to Facebook, but we can upload this to YouTube as well. But if you put your information in the chat, I'll be happy to follow up. And we will be making it available to any medium that would like to get it. We can make that available. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so I'm hopeful that Preeti could introduce herself as well. Name that I'm not directly familiar with as well. If you would like to do so. If not, that's fine. So I'm seeing the clock now is a little bit after 1 o'clock our local time here in Toronto. That means we've been on the call for about 2 hours. So I think at this point in time, we will wrap up. As I noted in the past as well, we are quite interested in remote communities, especially in Indigenous roadless communities here in Canada, especially as in terms of applying our UnityNet Unity Hub model. The Unity Hubs are essentially showcasing the 4 different aspects that we can integrate into every Unity garden. And we're hoping to partner with some communities, the Indigenous communities here, and perhaps some Indigenous communities in Africa to twin those projects together. And this is where we're hoping that we can leverage our REFI regenerative financing network to begin to pull some of that fund money from the degenerative system and into a circular economy financing system that we are in charge of and in control of ourselves. So that concept of putting some of the funds into a place that is under the direct control of Indigenous peoples and who control their own destiny and futures. That is a key aspect of what we are trying to showcase as well. So these are pathways we're trying to move forward with through our network here in Canada, UnityNet Canada, Ontario, GTA, and our partners in places like Ottawa and Calgary, and even in Windsor now, where we're hoping to do some joint projects with other communities and Indigenous partners, and of course settler partners as well. So we're not being exclusive or inclusive only of the Indigenous peoples, but we want to work jointly in developing these regenerative demonstration projects, regenerative ecotourism models in all of our different communities, where we're integrating healthcare, holistic wellness, and all of the pathways to achieving what we call a globalized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. So thank you all for coming on the call with us for week 89 of the Indigenous Global Unity Summit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Andrew.
I love you all. See you next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank you.
Love
Bye.
you.